Everything sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. You've got a fascinating story. I'm looking forward to getting into it. I'm actually coming out of Kansas City, Missouri.
Excellent, excellent. I have been to Kansas City. In fact, that's where I bought this RV. We flew there and bought the RV there. So
Oh, cool. Very
yeah,
cool. That's a good thing. Yeah, I love it.
yeah.
And I always love the spirit of those that get into the RV and just get out and watch the world. So it's nice. I aspire to be at that point at some point in my life.
I know they tend to, a lot of people wait until they're sort of older to get into the RVing lifestyle, but I've embraced it at a younger age and I just love it. It gets you outdoor. You spend a lot more time outdoors. You spend a lot more time, you know, admiring the environment. And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel very grateful to have this lifestyle that I live.
Well, and you have an adventurous spirit, and obviously with the picture behind and your story, we're gonna get into all of that. And I want to begin our conversation with 4 years ago, this pandemic began. We didn't know what was going to happen. And now that we're kind of in this post-pandemic era, how did you make it through it and how did it change you?
Boy, the pandemic definitely changed my life a lot because, as you can tell, I've got an Aussie accent. I'm from Australia, and although I'm a US resident and I'm married to an American, I love spending time here. I also love going home to Australia every year to see my family and my friends. And so, when the pandemic struck, it really shut down my ability to travel and to see my family. It shut down a lot of my business because I was running in-person events, and it definitely changed life a lot for me. But I like to pride myself on being able to pivot my passions and
Yeah.
being able to adapt no matter what the weather is or no matter what the circumstances were, right, or are. And so that was just another challenge for me that I had to figure out, like all of us, right?
Yeah, for sure. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living here in 2024. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, third graders. It's career day. One of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Love that question because I've just been teaching at elementary schools to kids, and I am a professional kite flyer, and I love to share my passion for wind. I call the wind my best friend, and I love sharing my passion with wind and kites with kids and adults, and big kids too. And the skills that we learn in flying a kite are not just skills for doing sports like snow kiting or kite surfing, but those skills are actually life skills too, like overcoming fears and finding the courage to be out there in the wild, windy weather.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream?
Boy, that's a long time ago. I'm definitely showing my age, but when I was a young kid, my parents had a sports store, and so it was very, very exciting. Upbringing that my brother and I had. We would sell skis in the winter time, so my brother and I loved to ski, and then in the summer months, all the latest sort of sporting equipment would come into the store, and my brother and I had the ability to try all those new sports. So I think my career changed every time a new piece of sporting equipment came in. I wanted to be, the best that I could at that particular sport. And it's obvious by the career that my brother has had as a gold medalist in the Olympics, and he's a professional athlete and sports person. I have never won a gold medal in the Olympics like my brother, but I've always strived to be the best that I could at the different sports or activities that I've done.
So it seems like, being a snow kiting champion, and with your brother being a medalist, it's just kind of been a part of your family lineage, so to speak, huh?
It really is. We follow in our parents' footsteps and they make a bigger impact on us than sometimes we want. And my parents were entrepreneurs. They had their own business from when I was born. My mum talks about putting me in my baby basket under the counter while she served customers in their retail store. And my dad was a skier. He loved to ski in the wintertime. He loved to sail in the summer months. And so he really went out on a limb back there in the 70s and the 80s 90s and started a sports store in Australia. And many of you might be thinking, hey, what, skiing in Australia? Is that even a thing? And it really is. We lived about 3 or 4 hours back then. It's about 2.5 hours now with the better highways, but we lived close enough to the snow that that was something we could go and do for the day or the weekend. And certainly in all of our school holidays, we spent time doing our sports. So I really kind of followed in my parents' footsteps, so that when I was about 18 or 19, I started my own sports store with all of the young people's sports, the snowboarding, the skateboarding, the rollerblades, and I called it Adrenaline Sports. So my name's Jenny, but they ended up calling me AdrenaJen, AdrenaJen for short, and that's where my nickname came from.
Awesome. So when did you realize you had a talent for this as a champion? What was the first event you won, or what was the moment where you were like, this is my life, this is what I want to do?
You know, I wasn't actually a natural athlete and sports person like my brother. I like to call myself, I was actually a bit of a scaredy cat when I was a young girl. And so I really didn't have that same uh what's the word? Power, desire, and confidence that my brother did as an athlete. For me, it took practice. I actually had to train and go to the gym and train and build up my fear tolerance, I call it, and build up my courage and build up my confidence. And so, in every sport that I did, my mum used to say that my brother was like excellent at one sport, whereas I was really good at lots of different sports. And I think the sports that I focused on at the particular time, I was able to get to a stage that I was proud of. There was a time when I was a figure skater in my young teens, and I used to figure skate on the ice rinks, and I got to, a state level. Then I got into mountain biking, downhill mountain biking at one stage, and I was so proud in my 20s to represent Australia in the downhill mountain biking championships and wear the Australian jersey. That was a super proud moment. But when I discovered flying a kite, I saw some of the first pictures ever of a kiteboarder on a magazine. And I'm like, wow, that looks amazing. It was kind of like windsurfing, but you were riding a sort of a twin tip board like a wakeboard. And it looked like something thrilling and adrenaline pumping sport, just like I love to do. And it was something new. And I always like to be the kind of first kid on the block to get into those new sports. I knew that was something I had to try. And I love to ski. That was probably my favorite sport, but we can only ski in the winter time. And when I decided I wanted to learn to kiteboard, I knew that I needed to go and have a lesson.
Yeah.
And back then in the early 90s, there were very few schools that you could go and get a kiteboarding lesson. So I knew I had to travel to Hawaii in order to do that back then. And it just worked out that I got to have one of my dreams come true of going heli skiing up in Alaska before I went to Maui to get my kite lesson. And so I had a kite with me when I was in Alaska, and I met another kind of sexy heli ski guide that was also a windsurfer, and he had a kite with him, and we decided we'd go out there and fly our kites with our skis on. In fact, I was riding a snowboard back then, but you can see it works great with skis or snowboard. And that that moment in time is so memorable because it was when I discovered that I could add my two favorite sports together, the sports of skiing and the sports of sailing. It was pretty much like sailing on snow,
Yeah.
and they were combined. And that was when we sort of fell in love with the whole idea and concept of snow kiting. And Joe, we also fell in love with each other that day. And that sexy heli ski guide is now my husband of 16 years. So quite a
Excellent.
memorable day that was.
Yeah. So who's been a hero for you?
Heroes for me have always been those female athletes, those badass women that are doing, incredible things and really standing out against the men in my sport, especially during my younger years. But now that I'm getting older, and I'll confess I'm over 50 now, and still getting out there and doing these extreme sports. And now my inspiration are the people in their 70s and 80s that are still doing these extreme sports and really showing me how much longer I have in my life in order to do these sports. There's a guy called John who's here on the Oregon coast with me, and he's 75, and he had a stroke about 8 or 9 years ago. And he's hard to understand, to be honest with you, because the left side of his face is not working like it used to. And he gets out there in the big waves and goes kite surfing. And to me, he's one of the most inspiring people I know, because he's really proving to all of us that we're never too old. And if we keep practicing, we can keep doing our sports for as long as we can.
Speaking as long as you can, you've been doing this for quite a while. You've done very well. What has been your key to longevity? What gets you up every day? What motivates you to do what you do?
Another great question. I'm a bit of an energizer bunny, as you're probably already figuring out. I
Yeah,
don't need a cup of coffee in the morning to get me going.
me too.
I'm ex- I'm excited about life, and I'm excited about the adventures that I get to do every day. And planning my day, it always has something fun to do. It's not necessarily trudging off to the gym, which I'm not enjoying. I'm out there planning to go for a hike, or to go snow kiting, or to go kite surfing. And so I've always got goals that I'm aiming towards, which are keeping me motivated to keep improving and keep practicing my skills. And I'm a dreamer. I'm always dreaming, setting goals, and planning adventures that I'm looking forward to.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Best advice that I've ever gotten is that age is just a number.
Yeah.
My grandma's about to turn 100,
Wow.
and she told me recently, I think when you get to 100, you're definitely in that, the crone years, and definitely full of wisdom. And she told me recently that you're better off to be lucky than rich, because if
Yeah.
you're rich, you can lose your money, but if you're lucky, you can always make it back.
I love
So
it.
being lucky in life, I think, is great advice, and aiming to be lucky rather than aiming to be rich.
So, of all these things that you've accomplished and done and become, what are you the proudest of?
I think the things that I'm most proud of is, after having a setback, and I've had quite a few in my life, after that setback, getting to the comeback stage, and getting, achieving those goals that you've set. And sometimes when you get injured, I'll use my back surgery as an example. I started getting back pain. It wasn't just from an incident or an accident. My back started aching. I'm sure there's many of you out there that relate to that. And all of a sudden, I was uh, I was about 46 years old, and I got the news that I needed to have a spinal fusion and have my L5 S1 vertebrae fused together. And at that point in time, I knew I was broken and needed fixing, and how grateful I am for modern medicine and technology that they could fix me. And you're also grieving the life that you thought you might have, and can you still have that life after going through something like that? Now, I had 12 months of recovery where I had to hobble around. I could hardly walk. There was no way I could be doing my sports and activities. And so staying positive during those times, and not getting too depressed, and keeping dreaming and making those goals is really important. Finding hope, finding somebody who has been there before you, that's been through spinal surgery and gotten back to their sport. And I remember telling my doctor one day, I was in his office, and I said, "I'm going to send you a photo of me kite surfing, and being a champion kite surfer for you to put on your wall so that other people coming in can find that hope that they can get back to their sports after a tragedy like having to have spinal surgery. And it took me, I think it was 3.5 years after my spinal surgery, but I got to compete in the Australian kitesurfing championships down in Torquay, which is a famous surf spot where you've got big waves. And I became the female women's Australian kitesurfing champion at the age of 48.
Wow.
After having spinal surgery, I was double the age of the other women I was competing against. And that really proved that you can have that ageless attitude and you can get back and still be a champion or the top of whatever your sports or goals are after a tragedy like that.
Absolutely. So, Jenny, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Right, there's people that think I'm crazy, right? They're like, "Oh my god, look at all this. She's out in the big waves and skiing these big mountains and being chased by polar bears, she must be crazy." I like to think of myself as just on the sane side of crazy. And in order to have a life of doing all these extreme sports, you need to be extremely safe as well. And anybody that comes and does my coaching camps and clinics, and I teach people to fly kites on the water and snow all the time. They really admire and thank me for the amount of safety that I teach. They say I'm one of the safest people that I know. So although from the outside I look crazy, on the inside I am being very careful and following safety protocols and always being observant for red flags and trying to make a decision that is going to keep me safe. They call me AdrenaJen, and you might think that I'm just, addicted to that adrenaline of the sport, but adrenaline is also the body's natural reaction to keep us safe. It keeps us aware. It keeps us looking around so that we can make a smart decision on keeping ourselves safe and the longevity of what we're doing.
So last year, my son wanted to do this big kind of bungee thing at an amusement park, and he got right there and they tilted his body up and he panicked. So I wasn't mentally ready, but I'm like, let's do it. And I remember they were pulling me back, and the gal said, "Don't worry, this is the safest ride in the park." And I keep thinking she was either really good at being placebo or she was really being honest. And I think she was being honest with something that's that risky. But I remember it was like there was the perfect sales pitch going up there. And I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love doing stuff like that. So I was like, let's go. So if anyone wants to hire you, they want to reach out, they want to look into your world, any of the good business, where can they go?
They can go to my website. I have a website, AdrenaJen.com. You can also find me on Instagram if you're an Insta lover at AdrenaJen as well, and also on Facebook at AdrenaJen. So if you Google AdrenaJen, you're going to find me all over the place. You'll find me on YouTube giving instructional videos and to build your confidence of getting into these sports and some really good tips that I've learned over the years. You can send me an email, please reach out. I love helping people and sharing my knowledge. I'm just as passionate about helping others do these sports as I am about the passion of doing these sports myself. And I'm so excited, Joe, that I'm actually reaching out to a new market of people. I'm
Yeah,
writing a children's book right now,
cool.
and that has been such a great process for me. It feels like a bit of therapy for me, writing about how I got into flying kites and finding that courage and really sharing that with the next generation of wind warriors, I like to call them, the kids that can get into these wind sports, and rather than being scared of the high winds and the weather, they actually start to see the wind as their playmate, their best friend that they can go out and fly a kite and find joy. So I'm really sharing my knowledge with a wide variety of people these days.
I love it. AdrenaJen, thank you so much. I really appreciate your story. Keep doing the great work out there. It's so great to meet you.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate you having me on your podcast today, and I hope your listeners have found some inspiration and they're excited to go outside and try flying a kite if they've never done it before.
I have
Thanks
no
again.
doubt. I have no doubt. Thank you so much. Have great travels in that RV.
Thank you, Joe.
Take care.